getting dressed. Chris Canty joining us this morning. You guys have a good weekend?
Good weekend of football.
Great weekend of football. We're going to dive right in and start with the Ravens and Texans. All right, so this wasn't quite the quarterback battle that we had hoped for between Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson, and you can't pin that on Lamar. He was lights out, threw for 222 yards, 4 touchdowns, added another 86 yards on the ground, more than enough for the Ravens to top the Texans 41-70. Baltimore faithful showing their quarterback a whole lot of love, chanting MVP, and teammate Mark Ingram couldn't agree more.
The MVP front runner. If anybody else got to say something different about that, then come see me.
Yeah.
I'm right here in Bmore outside the bank. If you got an issue with that, come see me. I'm about that. Big trust. Woo woo. Lamar Jackson in the flesh. Yes, sir. Big trust.
I'm with you.
All right, Nick. Ravens looked fantastic yesterday. Some would say even maybe as good as any other team in the league. Are they the best team in the NFL right now?
Right now, they're clearly the best team in the AFC, and they are right there, along with Green Bay and New Orleans, in my eyes, as the best teams in the NFL. I'd like to see them go up against some of those best teams in the NFC, other than Seattle, who, by the way, they won in this. They beat in this last month of football. They've beaten New England. They've beaten Seattle. They just annihilated Houston. It is hard to find a thing right now, Chris Canty, the Baltimore Ravens don't do exceptionally well. Early in the year, they weren't getting to the quarterback. They've started to do that. Early in the year, the pass defense on the back end was not as good as we were used to in recent times from Baltimore Ravens team. They then trade for Marcus Peters. He was sensational yesterday and already has had a couple huge splash plays. They get Jimmy Smith back from injury. They already had Brandon Carr. They already had Humphrey. They already had Earl Thomas. And, of course, most notably, they have a guy right now, this moment, playing as well as anyone in the league in Lamar Jackson, and one of the best coaches to go along with it. So if you said they're the best team in football, I wouldn't argue with you. I think they are clearly the best team in the AFC, and because they have that head-to-head tiebreaker with New England, they're only a half game back of being the 1 seed in the AFC, which I think is absolutely within their grasp, considering they just got through the toughest portion of their schedule, a perfect 4-0.
No, you're absolutely right. There wasn't much that went wrong for the Ravens yesterday outside of not being able to get the Justin Tucker field goal, which was from automatic range after Matt Judon strip sack. But, I mean, that was a complete performance by that Ravens team. And when you look at what they've done defensively, I think you're absolutely right. The turnaround has been led by the secondary of the Ravens. They realized that they couldn't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback early, so you need to be able to hold up on the back end. That's why they made the trade with Seattle to bring over Marcus Peters with Jimmy Smith and Marlon Humphrey. That's as good a cornerback trio as we have in the National Football League. And, oh, by the way, they have Earl Thomas patrolling the deep middle of the field. So you saw yesterday that secondary forced Deshaun Watson to hold the ball a little longer than he wanted to, and then the rush was able to get there. Patrick Owasor, Matt Judon, and others. So for me, defensively, that's been the catalyst, that secondary. But offensively, they're just so multifaceted in terms of the different dimensions that they can present to opposing defenses. That run game, and then having the 3 tight ends with Nick Boyle and Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst, those 3 guys create matchup problems for defenses. If you try to play base defense, then they're going to create matchup problems in the passing game with those tight ends. If you go with nickel defense, well, they can line it up and run it at you with Lamar Jackson being one of the primary options in the backfield. So I just think in terms of the different dimensions that offense can present to opposing defenses, that's going to be a tough challenge for any defense in the National Football League to slow down.
And for Lamar, this was an important game for a number of reasons. One, obviously, every game's important when you're trying to get a bye, trying to be the 1 seed. But Lamar is 14-3 as a starter in the regular season. But 2 of those losses came against the best quarterback in the AFC, the best quarterback in football, Patrick Mahomes. The 3 best quarterbacks in the conference, I think at this point it's pretty clear, are Lamar, Mahomes, and Deshaun Watson. Had he then lost to Deshaun Watson, I wonder if people would wonder, okay, so Lamar, as great as he is, when he goes up against the guys he's going to be going up against for the next decade, Watson and Mahomes, does the other team have the quarterback edge? I thought Baltimore would win this weekend, but I thought Deshaun Watson would have a better game, not only than he did, but a better game than Lamar. I just thought the rest of the Ravens would come to play in a way Baltimore could win. Lamar was sensational. He made no significant mistakes. And you mentioned the 3 tight ends and the running backs. He did what he did without any significant receiver production the entire game. Another game we're going to talk about, Philadelphia. Their team had no significant receiver production, and their offense got stuck in the mud after the first quarter and could never get going. The Ravens had no significant receiver production and dropped 41 on a team that is also in the running, or was in the running, for a bye in the AFC. It was a sensational performance by Lamar.
Well, here's the thing. Offensively, I thought the Ravens got out to a slow start. Lamar Jackson in particular, he was only 1 for his first 6, but the Houston Texans offense couldn't capitalize on the miscues, and I think that team had a hard time getting up off.
You?
Well, after you saw how the first couple of drives ended up, I mean, you had the strip sack by Matt Judon, but the fact is that they didn't get off the mat from that DPI challenge that Bill O'Brien had with DeAndre Hopkins and Marlon Humphrey in coverage. It should have been the ball spotted at the 1-yard line in a goal-to-goal situation, but the refs didn't overturn the non-call, and as a result, you saw that Texans team just was deflated in that moment, and then Baltimore capitalized on the momentum. And when you allow a team like Baltimore to get ahead early in a football game, it's going to be tough because they have so much balance on the offensive side of the ball. If you make them more one-dimensional, then you have a chance. But in order to do that, your offense has to dictate the complexion of the game by being able to put points on the board first, and the Texans just couldn't do that. Baltimore rattled off 34 points before the Texans even got on the scoreboard, which was midway through the fourth quarter. So the fact is that this offense, with Lamar Jackson as their quarterback, if they can have that type of balance where they run for over 200 yards and they throw for over 200 yards, good luck trying to slow them down.
You may not think the Ravens are the best team in the NFL, but is Lamar Jackson the best player in the NFL right now, Nick?
I don't think he's the best player in the league. He's not the guy that if everyone were available, he would be my #1 pick. I think Mahomes would be ahead of him. I think Russell Wilson, because even though he's older, he still has so much football ahead of him, would be ahead of him. Deshaun Watson, last night notwithstanding, or yesterday afternoon notwithstanding, might still be ahead of him. But that's not the question you're asking. To me, the question is who's playing the best right now, right? So these are 2 different questions. This is almost like college football playoff. Like, is Alabama the best team? I don't know, but did they have the best season? Do they deserve to be in the playoff? With Lamar, the only person in football who can argue he's playing as well as Lamar is Russell Wilson. So is he the best player in football? Probably not. Is he having the best season of anyone in football? It's either him or Russell Wilson, and I will not accept another answer. Like, I hope you have one of those 2 answers, but I think, to me, I think there's only 2 viable candidates right now for, in 2019, who has been the best player in the league, Lamar or Russell Wilson. To me, it's clearly one of those 2 guys.
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong answer when it comes down to those 2 guys, but I would probably say that Lamar Jackson is the most outstanding offensive player, but Russell Wilson is the MVP, because I don't believe there's a player in the league that means more to his team than Russell Wilson. I just feel like Lamar Jackson is surrounded with a better supporting cast, whereas Russell Wilson has to shoulder more of the responsibility for not just his offense, but his team overall being able to win games.
All right, speaking of Lamar, time now for Put a Grade on It, sponsored by CarMax. Lamar with another game with 300 total yards, 4 touchdowns. So, Nick Wright, put a grade on Lamar's performance yesterday.
It's another A+. I mean, he's racking them up over the course of the season. He outdid what he did against New England. He now, in the last month, has played Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, beating him, Tom Brady and the Patriots beating him, and now Deshaun Watson and the Texans beating him. I give Lamar an A+.
I'm going to give him an A. I can't give him an A+ because I don't think enough was on the line in yesterday's game to go ahead and give him that nod. I usually reserve A+ for being able to clinch your division, clinch a playoff spot, or winning a playoff game. But Lamar Jackson was exceptional at one point in that game, had 13 straight completions. I mean, he had 3 of his 4 touchdown passes come from within the pocket, so that can dismiss that myth that he's not just a dual threat quarterback, but he's actually a guy that can win playing from the well. But Lamar Jackson was outstanding yesterday.
An enormous amount, though, on the line for the Texans. They were trying to get the first bye in the history of their franchise. That now they can wave bye to that because they got no shot at it now.